After they were already on the second floor of the tavern and the protagonist drank a cup, he really liked the wine and realized that it deserved its glory. Kai Chong felt that Chen Xiumen was probably already in a hurry to report what had happened, so she thought it would be better if they also got to the Temple of the Buddha's Heart as soon as possible. Qin understood that there was no need to worry so much about some second-rate sect. The girl did not think that the sect of Ice and Flame had already set their eyes on Qin Yu. She hoped that her father and mentor would be able to cope with this situation. Then someone outside started shouting that some guy was a pervert. That Qin and Kai Shan were surprised. She was angry that someone dared to harass girls in their city. She got up and said she would be right back, but Qin wanted to go with her. Guys, it is difficult to release such videos every day, so I ask you to subscribe to the channel. We will fill 2,000 subscribers and the new part will not keep you waiting. After that, they show us the entrance hall of the tavern and there was a crowd of people standing there. And in the center there was a guy and a girl. The girl called the guy an unscrupulous impudent. He offered her to tell fortunes and eventually began to touch her for the fifth point. The man replied that he was a very responsible person and his such methods of divination. And we are shown that the girl hit him in the face. He can't afford to be careless in his work. And the girl was very embarrassed. He came up to her and leaning his hand to his face added that he was not deceiving her, because he would never offend such a beauty like her. He was very close and continued to insist that he had been a noble man all his life and did not intend to deviate from the righteous path. He only wanted to help beautiful girls find out their fate so that everything in their life would turn out well. The girl had already begun to believe him when their lips almost touched. He often faces misunderstanding and it hurts him, but he does not give up his job and steadfastly continues to bear the heavy burden of the fortune teller. It is not given to everyone to understand. Seeing this picture, Kai Shan was very angry, and Qin thought he was cool and admired him. This man already wanted to touch the girl's melon, because it's much easier for him to guess. And immediately Kai Shan appeared behind him, who pronounced his name, which made him very surprised. His name is Sidu Zhengyu. The man turned around and recognized the baby Kai Shan and he asked if she wanted him to tell her fortune. But Qin grabbed his hand and asked him to tell his fortune first. The man immediately replied that such as he does not guess. Sidu considered Qin a real pervert. Even though he is still so young, Kai Shan introduced him to Sidu Zhengyu. He is a freelance employee of the Temple of the Heart of the Buddha. He is very good in every way except this. The protagonist has heard about this guy. He is the second son of the Sidu family. Since childhood he was very talented. At the age of 18 he broke through to the stage of the Destroying Kingdom. He could have had a glorious future, but he decided to join the Temple of the Buddha's Heart as an ordinary employee. According to his own words, only in the Temple of the Buddha's Heart there is a sufficient accumulation of beauties that would bring him joy from life. He was always very open and cheerful. His favorite fun is pretending to be a fortune teller to grope girls for different places. But he can also be called the greatest hero of the human race. During the previous attack of the demon race, he single-handedly forced them to retreat. Thanks to him, the Buddha hearts continued to sleep peacefully in the temple. In the end, he fell at the hands of the empress of the demon race, but before he died, he managed to pinch her in one place. And they show us how Sidu did it with a demoness and she, embarrassed, called him an impudent. After this incident, the demon empress could not get rid of that painful memory for many years. As a man, I am not quite decent, but I am an excellent warrior. Sidu asked not to look at him like that, because he scares him. Kai Shang told him that her father and mentor strictly forbade him to harass other girls. As soon as she returns to harm, she will immediately report this incident. Sidu assured her that he had stumbled a little and asked her to give him another chance, but Kai Shang was adamant. Qin still decided to stand up for the man and asked her to give him another chance on the condition that it would not happen again. Kai and Shang agreed, since Qin was already asking and Sadhu thanked him for his help. Then they both went back upstairs, because they still had wine waiting for them, and then the hedgehog asked them to take him with them, because it's almost a month before the salary, and he's already broke. After that, they were on the second floor and the already drunk Sidhu told Qin that he had made the right choice, because joining the Buddha temple would be his best decision in his life. Soon he will see what kind of students there are, white-skinned, with large melons, but before the man could finish, he saw an angry Kai Shan and stopped. He decided to switch to another conversation. Immediately, he drew attention to the young girl and asked Qin if she was his slave. Qin was surprised with his question. Sidhu asked him to be careful with her, because she could bring him a lot of troubles. The protagonist of course knew this. Qin realized that Sidhu immediately recognized what kind of family she was from. Sidhu added that when this girl grows up, she will become an indescribable beauty. He immediately realized this from his own experience. There will be so many males chasing after her. In general, there will be no end of problems. After all, not all men are as decent as Uncle Sidhu. Qin understood what he was talking about and realized that he had overestimated him. Kai and Shang said that there is one case in which his help is needed. or rather the help of the family is full. Uncle was surprised and asked again. She said that Chen Xuan from the Ice and Flame sect came. They want to take Qin Yu. The man knows that this sect is serious opponents, but not for his family. He asked them not to even get involved and let him deal with it himself. Qin replied that he had already climbed in and put Chen Xuan on his knees, and Sidhu was very surprised. He immediately started laughing at the top of his voice and called him a good fellow, because the Ice and Flame sect is always sticking its long nose into other people's affairs. Finally, there was a person who clicked them on him, but he asked Qin not to worry because he would protect him. The protagonist immediately thanked him and shouted to the waiter to bring more wine and that he would not leave sober today. The girl said that she was bored here and wanted to go for a walk. Qin replied that she could take a walk with Qianshan and Yu and asked how she was. The girl began to rejoice and the three of them got up from the table because it really got boring here. Qianshan wondered why Qin decided to get rid of their company and assumed that he wanted to talk alone with Sidhu, and they immediately left. Sidhu realized that he had a conversation with him and the protagonist agreed. He wanted to borrow something from him and pointed it out with his finger. The man was very indignant and surprised, because how could he give him something so important to himself? 3 hours later, Qin and Sidhu left the establishment and the man wanted to have another drink. He hugged him and said that from now on he was like a brother to him, and therefore he could not refuse his brother. He will give him anything he asks for. Qin thought that Qianshan would call him uncle. Immediately his face changed, and even Sidhu seemed to come to his senses and asked what was it. The protagonist realized that the girls were in trouble. Sidhu thought it was a sect of Ice and Flame. Qin didn't know for sure and decided to follow them and asked Sita to stay here, but of course he wanted to go with him. He just received a signal from Yu. The kidnapper wants him to come alone and asked Sita not to worry because he will cope alone. Sidhu asked him to be careful and the protagonist using the force quickly flew up. After that, they show us somewhere in the mountain forest. You didn't understand why he still wasn't there. Immediately we are shown a mysterious girl who called Qin so slow. She was sitting on a rock and a silhouette with a spear appeared out of the smoke. Qin was furious that his eyes were already glowing red. The girl was glad that he finally appeared. She shouted that she was here and waved her hand at him. But Qin was furious and the girl was surprised when he pointed a spear at her and used force. He released fire into it and the girl had to jump back. She was surprised because she felt a strong flame and immediately Qin himself appeared, who literally flew out of the fire. He immediately grabbed her and asked if she was looking for death. The girl shouted that she was and that he let her go. Qin was surprised at her words and asked who she was. She asked him to loosen his grip because she didn't want to hurt anyone. She felt such an ardent temperament. She was waiting to meet him and asked if he really wanted to kill her. Qin asked if she was from the Ice and Flame sect. She replied that they were a bunch of pathetic hangers-on of the Immortal Clan and that he thought too low of her. Then Qin looked at Yu and immediately asked why she forced him to come here. She told him to stop choking her first. Immediately, Qin released her. The girl stood up and explained that she was looking for a meeting with him to invite him to join her clan, since the Beast of the Desolate Lands is now a part of it. Qin was very surprised and immediately asked who she was. He didn't understand how she knew about Yazi. She asked Qin not to be nervous, because since he now has the strength of a desert beast, this is what they have in common with him. She began to transform and added that she was also ready to admit to him that her father was one of the guardians of the desert lands. He was a black dragon, and a huge demon appeared behind her. Qin was surprised when he heard this information. The girl realized that his surprise looked very sincere. Apparently, Qin really doesn't know about her father. She guessed that Qin had been reborn. She asked him if he knew how vast the desert lands were, and Qin replied in denial. She said that the desert lands continuously stretch for many hundreds of millions of kilometers. They are larger in area than the kingdom of the immortals. They are divided into 7 natural boundaries, each of which is subordinate to one of the princes. And her father is one of such princes. He owns the 7th frontier. In his position, her father is not inferior to the head of the Immortal Clan. According to their cultivation, even the strongest representatives of the Immortal Clan are not able to harm him. The protagonist noticed that she famously tells all this. In his previous life, during his 10 years in the desert lands, he had never met a black dragon and asked Yazi if he knew him. The dragon only growled something and whispered in his ear. The Black King was Yazi's little brother, and so Qin asked him if he was cheating on him and he said something again. Qin chuckled and the girl added that in his position it would be natural to join her clan. She would give him time to get ready, and then she would take him to her father. The protagonist apologized to her and replied that he was used to moving by himself, but thanked her for the invitation. The girl viciously asked if he thought she was cheating on him or if he was afraid of something. Qin told her that he just wasn't interested. The girl explained that Qin no longer belongs to the human race. Only with them will he feel like his own. She thought he was rejecting her because he liked that immortal Zhao Xuan. Qin understood what she was talking about. When he killed Zhao Dian, this girl was hiding somewhere nearby and watching everything. and he didn't even notice her. Kin told her that he wasn't interested in her either and wouldn't join them. She found him very stubborn, but added that the doors of her clan are always open to him. Kin was happy to talk, but it was time for him and looked at the girls who were lying by the stone. He also added that he did not like her working methods and warned that next time he would not spare her, and the girl considered him a bore. She also asked if she could take this little girl with her, because this girl has the blood of the race of ancient succubi. If not interfered with, in the future she will be able to unleash her full potential and grow up to be an ordinary succubus. But if he lets her go with her, her father will be able to purify her blood and get rid of the blood of succubi. She will grow up the same as her and in the face of their clan will find a family. Kin thought it sounded good. Succubi, though strong, but they couldn't compare with the beasts of the wasteland. Kin asked her how he could trust her. The girl replied that it was very simple. Their clan has a spell for making a contract. As long as they are true to their word, they will both live, and if one of them betrays the other, then an early death will come for him. Kin asked his dragon what he thought and Yazzie nodded to him. He agreed with her to sign a contract with her. The girl was happy. She immediately approached him and kissed him, which already surprised Kin very much. Then a huge purple seal appeared beneath them. Then there was a flash and the dragon was behind her. Yazzie told the black dragon that this was all he could do to help him. The couple seemed to fly up in passionate kisses, and immediately a seal of fire appeared on their hands. Then they separated from each other, and the girl said that from now on their lives depend on each other. If one day he changes his mind, he can just call her with his heart and she will immediately feel it. If he runs into trouble, their clan will do everything to help him. Then the protagonist noticed that their race has a very strange way of concluding contracts. The girl explained that to conclude a contract, it is enough for them to touch each other with any part of the skin. Then she picked up the girl and put her on her shoulder and wished him good luck and said goodbye. She immediately jumped into the distance. Kin felt that he had been tricked and already began to think that Yazzie was a sent spy. After a while, the girls woke up and Yu was surprised when she did not find the girl. Kin replied that she should not worry because she was fine. The girl apologized to him and immediately Kai and Sean woke up and also apologized. The protagonist doesn't blame them for anything, and everything should work out well for the girl. Then he turned and walked away. You didn't understand how she could have screwed up like that. If she wants to keep her reputation in the eyes of the owner, this should not happen again. Kai and Sean was surprised by Kin's words about the girl and thought that Kin was so mysterious. After that, they show us the temporary housing of Kin. Inside, Kin, Sidhu, Kai and Sean and Yu were sitting at the table. Sidhu asked him if he was okay and if he was hurt. The protagonist replied that he was fine. It was just a misunderstanding. Kai and Sean was surprised when Sidhu called him brother. Sidhu told her that he and Kin could already be considered sworn brothers. From now on, she should call him uncle, too. Kai and Sean was even more surprised, and Kin got up from the table and said that he was just joking. They should all get some sleep tonight, because tomorrow morning they are moving to the temple of the Buddha's heart. Kai and Sean noticed that the temple was already preparing to meet them with might and main. Kin couldn't wait to appreciate their warm welcome already. After that, we are shown the gates of the temple of the Buddha's heart. There were mysterious warriors standing there. The warriors were gigantic, and an elder stood in the center. There was also a mysterious man who was not really waiting for the guests. The elder noticed that a warrior with the sacred fire of the 9th rank must be lured to his side, and the guys agreed with their father. The other guy was surprised, and he already wanted to look at Kin as soon as possible. A moment later, we were shown the horses that were carrying the carriage. The old man realized that it was them and ordered everyone to get ready. Kin then opened the window to take a look. He noticed that they were almost there, but asked Kai and Shang why he was running somewhere. She replied that there was a mentor teeming among the greeters. Every time he sees satiety, he tries to beat him, and Kin was not surprised. After the carriage stopped and Kin was the first to get out, and therefore the elder was very surprised. He immediately realized that this young man was Kin Yu. He put his hand on his shoulder and was glad, because his figure is good. His body is strong, all the makings are in place. His son noticed that Kin possessing the sacred fire of the 9th rank, he would be able to achieve incredible achievements if he began to study forging. He has the potential to become a great blacksmith. Kin only laughed, because he knew that if they knew what his fire of destruction of the 9 heavens was capable of, they would hardly have had so much fun. Kai and Sean appeared, who noticed that her Uncle T's enthusiasm was directly spilling out of him. The old man replied that there was nothing in it. It's not every day that he meets a talent with the sacred fire of the 9th rank. The old man said that her father and mentor were also supposed to meet them, but they were distracted by some business. Kai and Shang replied that there was nothing wrong. Then a guy appeared who greeted Kin. The Temple of the Buddha's heart is glad to have a new member in his person. Kai and Sean introduced him to Bai Feifan, who is one of her temple brothers and the most talented novices, although he only possesses fire of the 7th rank, but his success in forging is amazing. and he also succeeded in brewing elixirs. In this he has no equal at all. And most importantly, in his cultivation, he has already reached the peak of the spiritual realm. He looked at Qin angrily somehow, but Kai and Sean said that he was very friendly and she hoped that the two of them would become friends very quickly. Bai replied to her that she was overpraising him too much, and it was not worth burdening a guest tired from the road with such nonsense. Qin noticed that this was very tactful on his part. He felt that Bai smelled of the sect of the Polar Sun. Bai told Qin that they would have a banquet in his honor. As an older brother, he will consider it an honor in the future to teach him everything he knows himself. The protagonist thanked him for his kindness, and Bai asked him to just call Brother Bai, and not by his full name. Kai and Sean thought that they really would soon become bosom friends. T laughed a lot and noticed that it was completely natural, because in their temple everyone always lived soul to soul and called her inside, and the brothers just looked at each other. After that, we are shown inside the temple of the Buddha's heart. Two beauties appeared there and greeted Mr. Qin. Looking at them, Qin was embarrassed and realized that Brother Sidhu was right about the local students. Bai noted that their temple has always been distinguished by inner calm and gentle orders. They don't live within strict limits, however. He wanted to convey something to him. Lang Qianshuang is the temple head's personal disciple, and her father, Lang Ningpo, is the temple's strongest warrior. We can say that whoever marries Qianshuang will get the temple in his own hands in the future. There are simply too many people who secretly and obviously dream about it, so he asked him to be attentive in what he says and does. You should not inadvertently get yourself into trouble. Qin asked if he was dreaming about it. Bai denied everything, because for him she is like a sister, especially since he wants to give all his strength to forging and brewing elixirs. The protagonist knew that with this approach, he would definitely achieve great success. By the way, he decided to ask if it is possible to train martial techniques of other schools and temples in the heart of the Buddha. Bai replied in denial, because they only train what their mentors give them. However, Qin can continue to develop martial techniques, which he first mastered before joining their temple. Qin heard his answer. The protagonist noticed that Bai was curious, and he realized that Qin was not simple and thought that maybe he understood everything about him. Ahead of them is the main hall and he should follow it. There was a large hall with many tables set. The man greeted the Supreme Preceptor, the Temple Maiden and Brother Bai, and noted that everything was ready for the start of the banquet. Then they sat down at the table. Qianshuang asked where the other mentors and novices were. The guy replied that some were already on their way. Others had left with the head of the temple, but they should also arrive soon. T asked Qin to eat more and have fun. Tomorrow they will hold an acceptance ceremony for him in the temple, and he agreed with him. After a while, all the people at the tables raised their glasses. The elder looked into his glass and did not understand why they were still not there. Qianshuang asked her uncle to tell her about what matters her father and mentor had left. He replied that werewolves appeared on a mountain not far from their ram, their leader at the 7th stage of the Destroying Kingdom. Although he is not strong, but he is very smart, cunning, and dexterous. He appears and disappears. Her father and mentor decided to deal with him personally. Qin noted that the beast at the 7th stage of the Destroying Kingdom, although dangerous, is not a serious opponent for the head of the temple. Moreover, she is not alone, but in the company of Qianshuang's father. But T is still uneasy in his soul, but immediately thought that he was too suspicious. Surely they are delayed for some other reason. The old man wanted to drink soon, because the wine is getting cold. Immediately, someone stamped loudly and a huge man appeared. He shouted Qianshuang's name and said that her father had returned, and he was holding a werewolf on his shoulders, and a mentor was standing next to him. My father wanted to look at her and thought that she had somehow lost her mind. Qianshuang replied that he was one of the most authoritative members of the temple. He could have been more attentive to his appearance. Immediately, the father threw the werewolf carcass to the ground and laughed hard. He said that everyone here is his own. To whom should he show off? Then he saw Qin and noticed that he had a proud bearing, a stately appearance. But the protagonist somehow frowned. The father asked Qianshuang why he was so unfriendly. Qianshuang was surprised and asked Qin what it was. The protagonist replied that he was one of the generals of the vanguard squad of werewolves. Four-eyed monkey Hazar. My father was surprised, because he had never heard of such werewolves and realized that Qin had a good outlook. Although the monster is fast, but in battle no. He's too weak for a general. Then mentor Qianshuang came over and told Qin that today they had a banquet in honor of his arrival. He can enjoy it, and this dead reptile is not worth distracting from the celebration. Qianshuang introduced Qin to the head of their clan, Fu Yao. The protagonist greeted her in return. He immediately noted that although this werewolf is very weak, but his appearance in these parts is alarming. He wanted to talk one-on-one with the head of the temple and she was wary. Immediately she called him to follow her and they both started to leave. T didn't understand what had confused their new friend. Kai and Sean replied that judging by the expression on Kin's face, the matter was very serious. Bai was a little angry because he didn't have time to appear, and already the water is muddy. After we are shown the office of the head of the temple, Kin and Fu Yao were already sitting opposite each other. She said they were alone here and he could come clean. Kin replied that the four-headed Hazar monkeys are very intelligent, observant, dexterous, and cunning. They are one of the few intelligent creatures from among the werewolves. Therefore, it is they who are sent forward before the arrival of the main army. They scout the situation and gather information to provide the werewolf army with information before the battle. Fu Yao assumed he was talking about an invasion of werewolves. In a previous life, before a large-scale invasion of werewolves, here and there people observed these four-eyed creatures. People did not attach much importance to this, considering them to be accidentally lost ordinary animals. Only after people noticed that after the Hazar monkeys, larger creatures appeared in the same places, they began to understand what was what, and then a whole army came to these creatures. Belated understanding of the problem led to huge sacrifices. However, in a previous life, the Hazar monkeys showed up much earlier than they are now. He agreed with her. The threat of an invasion of werewolves is absolutely real. They will grow out of the ground like grass in countless numbers to seize the territories currently occupied by people. When they come, the temple of the Buddha's heart will be flooded with blood. She did not understand how he knew all this. Ken replied that he was not deceiving her. After the first appearance of the Hazar monkeys, the main forces will be pulled up in less than a month. Their temple should start preparing for this as early as possible. Fu Yao asked why she should believe him. Ken replied to her that she owed nothing. The decision was hers alone. Kai and Sean told her that he never stopped surprising her with his insight. She agreed with him and invited him to come with her. They both got up and walked straight down the corridor. Then she touched a certain seal, which immediately lit up. She was on the door and they opened. After a while, they were all standing in the secret room. The senior mentor is Ti Ning. The second mentor is Lang Ningpo. The third mentor is Mo Ling Feng. The fourth mentor is Ren King Feng. Fu Yao asked Ken to tell them in detail everything he knew about the invasion of werewolves. He agreed with her. The first assault squad in the forest near the temple of the Buddha's heart. At this time, Bai was sitting near the river and considered Ken an extremely muddy character. He didn't know if he understood everything and if that was why he asked the head of the temple for an audience. Then immediately he sensed Chu Lin. He told him not to come here whenever he wanted. He asked him not to start. The mentor gave him a stealth spell. No one would notice the appearance of his aura here. Chu Lin noticed that his psyche was too shaky for a second spiritual son. He replied that if he had a serious reason to come here, then he should speak immediately. Otherwise, he would kill him on the spot without hesitation. Chu Lin understood the reason for his nervous mood. He's afraid that Ken might reveal his real identity, but there's no need to worry about that. He had received information from their fourth mentor. Ken did not communicate with the head of the temple about him, but about a much more important matter. We are shown Ren King Feng, who was grinning insidiously. Bai asked what the reason was. Lin told about the invasion of werewolves. They will soon appear at the temple of the Buddha's heart, which will give their temple of the polar sun a unique chance. During the invasion, they will stand aside and not interfere. And when the temple of the Buddha's heart falls, they will simply take everything that used to belong to them. Immediately, Bai grabbed Chu Lin at high speed, which surprised him very much. He realized that Ren King Feng was now his man. Bai was telling him that the Buddha Heart Temple was his territory. Recruiting people here, he was trying to challenge him. Lin replied that the fall of the Temple of the Buddha's Heart would be considered entirely his merit. He only needs Ken Yu. Bai thought that he needed his sacred fire of the 9th rank. Chu Lin replied that he had no talent for forging and alchemy like him. He was not a great fighter like the first spiritual son. And having obtained the sacred fire of Ken, he would still have hopes of taking a worthy place under the sun. He could not miss this chance. Bai did not understand why he should allow the appearance of another serious rival in his face, smiled maliciously and squeezed Lin's throat hard. He immediately replied that he could not worry about him. He swears before the heavens that as soon as he gets his sacred fire, he will immediately leave the temple of the polar sun. He asked that he put it down. Bai thought about it and still let go. He promised that when it was over, he would get Kin's fire. Lin thanked the second spiritual son. He wishes him good luck in his plans to capture the temple of the Buddha's heart. He will be nearby to help if anything at the right time. Then Chu Lin disappeared and Bai wondered if such trash as Lin deserved the sacred fire of the 9th rank and laughed. 9 days later, soldiers stood at the gate. They were not particularly happy because of the newcomer Ken, they have to keep a constant watch. They did not believe in the invasion of werewolves and others agreed with him. Inside the temple, Ken greeted the head of the temple, Fu Yao. He asked how the preparation was going. She has already warned all the neighboring temples to build a defensive line. If his words are confirmed, they will instantly find out about any encroachments in their area. Immediately, an unknown warrior ran into the task and shouted that Mentor Lin reported that about 100 werewolves were spotted 100 kilometers northwest of the city of the Buddha's heart, mostly at the third stage of the spiritual kingdom. They fit the description of the assault squad. She realized what had started. Fu Yao ordered him to tell Mentor Ling to continue to strengthen the defense line, to send the news to all major temples. If the first assault squad is already close, then they will soon face a real test of strength. He understood her and ran to execute the order. Qin said that now it was time for him to go. Fu Yao added that she had another request for him. The protagonist listened attentively to her. She has a daughter named Yitong and she wanted him to take her with him. She is very gifted, but she has an extremely short temper. She thinks that in his company she will have a better chance of avoiding trouble. The protagonist agreed with her, because he didn't see any problems here. She thanked him and handed her into his hands with a calm heart. She knows that he doesn't really intend to join their temple for real. Qin wondered if she had guessed it herself. Fu Yao understood that he was already too spoiled by the loot that he got when visiting the desert lands. She understands that their temple can no longer offer him anything more substantial. She assumed that he had come to their temple for a spiritual source. Qin realized that she was very perceptive. He wants to spend 3 months here, harden his body in the spring and then leave. Staying in a spiritual source strengthens bones and joints, which is very useful for the overall strengthening of the body. Although he is already quite strong, but such a hardening will definitely not be superfluous. That's why, as a return favor, she asks him to look after Yitong. Qin replied that before leaving, he would give her one combat technique, if she can master it to the fullest. Then in the future Fu Yao will no longer have to worry about her safety. She knew it would be great. She would tell her daughter to come to his training arena and Qin agreed with her. After we are shown the Temple of the Buddha's Heart training arena, Qin stood in the arena and felt that she was already here. She shouted at Qin to keep his eyes open and a certain red ball was flying at him, but Qin stood with his back to it and after a moment stopped the shuriken with his hand, not even looking at him. Then he looked back and saw a red aura. Immediately he jumped and an explosion occurred from below. There were already more shurikens at the top behind Qin and there was an explosion again. But everything was fine with the protagonist. There were a lot of different shurikens around him, which immediately stopped. A girl appeared who said that she was not impressed with the owner of the 9th sacred rank, who had visited the desert lands. Qin realized that she was probing him. Yitong replied that her mother wanted her to learn from his experience, but he was much weaker than she thought. The protagonist decided to teach her the first lesson: never treat an opponent lightly. She was immediately shackled by something and tied all over the arena. She didn't understand why she couldn't move and her shurikens fell down. Qin noticed that she had now lost. He had misled him about his skills in order to lull her into a trap that he had set in advance. The hero praised her for her intelligence. She agreed that she had lost and that he could do something, but now it was time to release her. Qin just snapped his finger and Tong was released. She said in a stern voice that it was time for them to move out and Qin just silently followed her. After that, they show us the warriors in the forest. Yitong heard that Qin and sister Kai and Shuang have a good relationship. The protagonist immediately thought that she was hinting to him to keep away from her. But Yitong replied in denial, because she believes that they are both suitable for each other, but he has to beware of someone. Qin was surprised by her words and did not understand who she was talking about. This is Bai Feifan. Qin was surprised again and asked what he had done. The girl replied that he was very cunning and could deceive anyone, but not her. Every time she passes by him, she feels a very dark energy. He's obviously not a good person, but she doesn't have proof yet. Qin noticed that she had a very accurate intuition. The girl was proud of herself and added that if he wants something to come out with Kai and Shuang, then he needs to beware of Bai Feifan. Then Qin asked if she liked anyone herself and the girl replied with a denial. The protagonist wondered what she would say about him. She replied that according to her first feelings, there is a core and integrity in him, you can rely on him and she loves such. If sister Kai and Shuang doesn't mind, then they could do a pair cultivation with him. The guy immediately replied to her that he was just joking and was very embarrassed. He decided to go ahead and Yitong replied that he had found someone to joke with, because she herself would make anyone blush. Afterward, a large warrior appeared on their way, who bowed and recognized these two. He is a senior student of Zhang Chuan Black Tiger School. They have already positioned themselves around this forest, and they have everything under control. Yitong knew Zhang Chuan. He was the most promising student of the Black Tiger School in the last 100 years. If he's here, then she's calm. Qin has heard his name, but just can't remember where or when. Zhang asked her not to exaggerate. He is still far from her and Qin. He asked them to follow him. He had already prepared a place for them in the garrison. It was very kind of him. Qin believed that he could impress a naive girl with a good-natured and caring boy. But he sensed treachery in him and did not understand why he reported the whole situation immediately at the first meeting. After the night, Qin and Tong sat around the campfire and cooked food. He gave her a fried leg on a stick to have a snack. When they were both eating, Tong asked Qin if he thought the werewolves might show up tonight. The protagonist gave her a vague answer. They may appear today, or tomorrow, or even in a couple of days. When he finished, he asked her to tell him about Zhang Xuan. The girl said that he was a senior student of the Black Tiger School. He was 20 years old. He was the son of an ordinary landowner, but 5 years ago he joined the Black Tiger School. He immediately revealed an incredible talent. He is a born swordsman with the sacred fire of the 7th rank. In their temple, she is considered gifted, but she is much inferior to him. She thinks that he is already at the stage of the destroying realm now. Their temple tried to lure him away, but he rejected the offer. She was sorry that such a talent would be lost in the Black Tiger School. Qin thought that the son of a cultivator and talent was immediately revealed in him, and also preferred the Black Tiger School. For him it all did not add up together. Tun added that a year ago, when he was at the peak of the spiritual realm, he killed a werewolf at the 3rd stage of the destroying realm. He became famous just after that incident. Qin shouted loudly that he remembered that Tong had already dropped her food and was scared. She began to get angry that he was screaming and scaring her so much, and also told him to return her leg and give it to her. A little angry, she was eating food and Qin remembered him. In a previous life, the invasion of werewolves rolled in waves. People suffered heavy losses, but werewolves also had their own problems. Then the most intelligent of them decided to recruit their spies among the people. They managed to bribe many, and they also sought out and recruited gifted children, pushing them to various temples, sects, and schools. The most famous traitor of the human race was called the Devil's Swordsman. The Devil's Swordsman behaved and moved very stealthily, but after his arrival, only a mountain of corpses remained. It is believed that he killed at least 1 million people. Because he was always so mysterious, people didn't know much about him. Even he had only vague memories. Low-born, stunningly talented, born in the Tian Empire, a born swordsman. Qin realized that Zhang Xuan was the Devil's Swordsman. He is the son of a farmer, striking everyone with his talent. He didn't know if Zhang Xuan was now a sent spy of the werewolves, or if in this life they had not yet betrayed the human race. There was an explosion immediately, and Qin realized that the werewolves were already here. On the other side of the woods, various monsters crawled out of the ground and also appeared from the sky and just came along the ground. The soldiers took up positions and restrained them. They let fire and other forces into them. Immediately, a certain seal appeared from the ground, in the center of which stood a monk. But immediately a huge sword flew into her, which destroyed her. It was a huge worm that split into 2 parts. The monk was able to escape, and Zhang Xuan himself was sitting on the sword in the center.